And welcome to the 6 Degrees of Smart Manufacturing webcast from CESMII. My name is Mike Yost, and I'm glad to have you here with me today. If you're familiar with this webcast series, you'll know that we are working to bring as many voices as possible from industry into this platform to give people the opportunity to talk about how they view smart manufacturing. It's our belief, and certainly my personal belief, that a lot of the knowledge that we need, we're going to get from each other. And the more we can reach out and connect to the people who are in this ecosystem with us, who have experiences and perspectives that can help us, the better off that we are going to be. So I'm going to be joined today to get the point of view from Mark Besser, who's the Senior Vice President of Customer Success for Savigent Software. I'll give you a little bit more background on Mark and his company here in just a minute. But before I do, I just want to talk about some logistics of the platform that we are using here. So the meeting today, you'll notice that you're not able to speak, that the microphones are muted. That's so we can move through quickly, because our format here is that we're going to get you in and out of here in 20 minutes. So I will have the conversation with Mark. If you do have questions, you should see a black bar as indicated on the screen there that has a couple different ways to participate. And one of them is the Q&A panel. So if you have questions for me, for Mark, for anybody, go ahead and submit those through the Q&A. And alternatively, you could send me an email. My email is mike.yost@cesmi.org. Any questions that you have will be answered by return email. And so everybody knows, this webcast is being recorded, and we will post the recording online shortly, and hope to use that online option for starting and continuing the dialogue that we're driving here today. One other point to mention for you is that you should have thumbnails. I am probably appearing in a small window, and you may or may not see other participants in the small window depending on the options you choose for your thumbnails. If you're not viewing anything the way that you want to see it, just click on those thumbnails. It'll give you several different options for displaying either the screen or the speaker, or a combination thereof. So with that, we'll turn our attention to the topic of the day. And as I mentioned, we've asked Mr. Mark Besser to join us here. He's the Senior Vice President of Customer Success with Savigent Software. You can see Mark's bio there. He's quite accomplished and experienced in our space. And I think the thing that's most important to know about Mark is that from his perspective, his point of view is one of a solution provider. So he'll explain a little bit about his perspective and how that shapes his view of what smart manufacturing is, and whether you think there's value for that point of view. I certainly think that there is. Mark's been a long time colleague of mine, and he serves on the CESMII Board of Governors and is a member of our Technology Advisory Committee, and he certainly has a good story to tell, both personally and professionally. So unfortunately, like many solution providers out there, they're busy people, and Mark ended up getting called away and is on an airplane right now. So I had to actually record the conversation with Mark 2 days ago. I'm going to switch over, play the conversation with Mark, and I will do that now, and then I will come back in about 15 minutes after Mark's conversation. Well, Mark, I'd like to welcome you, and thanks for being here and sharing your perspectives. Appreciate your flexibility here and contributing to this dialogue. I will start off the way we do every time by asking, what does smart manufacturing look like to you?
Thanks, Mike. I'll start with, smart manufacturing really in my mind is all about orchestration of the complexity of our environments today. And I think we'll circle back to that theme a couple of times along the way. Interestingly, working for a software provider and working in the technology space, one of the advantages that I get out of this process is I get to see lots of manufacturing plants. So for folks who work for a particular manufacturer, maybe they've worked for a couple over the course of their time, right? They get to see how things are done inside one environment or two environments or three environments where, working on the software side of the house, or for the folks who work on the hardware side of the house, we get to see hundreds of manufacturing plants. So, smart manufacturing in some ways too is the commonality across those environments, even when you're in diverse kind of conditions or diverse industries or diverse types of plants. I tell a story that you see commonality amongst diverse products. We have a customer who makes stone countertops, right? And this idea that making a stone countertop could be exactly the same as making a granola bar, and two very different manufacturing companies. Yet when you start taking a look at the process that they both follow, they're very similar, right? And the opportunity to learn from each other. They both have mixed operations. That mixed material is moved into a mold. That mold is shaken and pressed. One maybe adds pigmentation or paint on top of the other, sprays peanut butter over the top of theirs. They both end up in an oven. They both up in a cutter. They both end up in wrapping and packaging. But even though they're making very different products at the end of the day, the opportunity to share and collaborate on the complexities that both of them face, I think is a real smart manufacturing opportunity.
Right, and they both have processes. They both have requirements. They both have whether it's compliance requirements or it's customer requirements. Right. I mean, so there's to your point, the orchestration of a whole lot of things that are going on from a business perspective, from a real world environments perspective, from a conditions that day perspective. So I certainly get the fact that there's that commonality or that similarity at a minimum that spans as diverse an environment as you just talked about.
Yeah, and I'll add on top of that, I think we've been doing smart manufacturing for a long time. We've been manufacturing for over 200 years. It started with smart guys figuring out how to make products, and we've been looking for better ways to do that over the course of time. We'll talk a little bit about this complexity issue. Today, fast forward to today, we face competing forces. Manufacturers face. You have constant pressure to figure out, how do you save a few pennies, a few dimes, a few nickels, right? How do I make better product with less time, less resources, right? Less man hours, less cost. You combine that with a need or a desire in some industries to really leverage the investments that have already been made, right, in systems and people and technology and machines. Sure. These new machines are expensive too, so we tend to see a lot of how do I extend the life and squeeze out a few more months or a few more years, right, out of my lines. We've also got this, need or desire to figure out how to, get smarter to keep up on what's going on around us. We've got new equipment, new sensors. We can measure more, see more, report more, right? There's machines that are coming out with way more inherent intelligence built into them, and new technology and new softwares and new systems. How do you keep up on all of these software releases and features and technology, and on top of just what manufacturers already own? Right. That landscape gets pretty fragmented when you take a look at it, right? 50 years we've been building point solutions to solve individual problems inside a plant. And I actually think CESMII's got a slide that talks about this fragmentation, calls out that complexity. When you're trying to keep up with all that's going on in an environment like that, and in current day, how do you find time to get better? How do you find time for innovation?
Right. And to your point, we do have a slide. I'll flip to that now. This is a slide that CESMII uses pretty frequently to talk about the complexity that's that you've been alluding to, right? That is a challenge for manufacturers to innovate, and what this represents is an actual solutions taxonomy for a large manufacturer that everybody would know if I said their name. But you can see it's broken into 5 different columns here, each one representing a different department, and then each one of the boxes inside of the department is a different solution. Each one of those solutions was created for a specific purpose to solve specific problems that those departments had or have. And these are just the formal sanctioned, formally approved and supported by corporate solutions. I believe there's a total of 55 or 60 here on this slide, but there are a heck of a lot more that are unsanctioned in any particular plant, as there are other problems that need to be solved and solutions that pop up. And there's a whole build to this slide that shows that each one of these solutions that are created has its own database, has its own user interface, has its own connection to other systems, extracting data out. And all of that work, all of the effort that goes into creating these solutions, these standalone point solutions, as you call them, still results in up to 40 man hours every day at the end of the shift to pull the right information out of the whatever systems are needed to build those printed reports that end up at the top of the screen there, so that people can hand off to the next shift. So to your point, there's a lot of complexity built in here. So I know that's a big point that you wanted to hit on. Go ahead and I guess talk to the complexity here as you see it from your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, just taking a look at that slide, you got inventory, scheduling, quality, finance, warehouse, maintenance, compliance, safety, health and monitoring, genealogy, workforce management, training, traceability, time and reporting, shipping, receiving, CRM. You spin back a couple of 100 years. We had somebody who wanted to buy something from us, and a couple of clever guys to figure out how to make it and get it to them. And today we have to figure out how to, weave that fabric together to make all those systems and technology talk and speak. And that's really the harmonization and orchestration. We spend a lot of time talking about the individual point solutions of solving those problems, but it still leaves some gray space or some white space between those that screams for orchestration.
Okay.
And we're not even talking about data yet, right? We're just talking about systems. Right. You start thinking about data. An interesting tidbit here. I borrowed this from a data storage producer presentation. Should be out in the public domain, but it's a couple of years old, but I think the message is on point still. And they estimated that by the year 2020, which is just around the corner, right, that worldwide, taking a look at the planet, we're actually going to create 44 zettabytes of data. So you're asking yourself, I'm sure, what's a zettabyte?
I was going to say, now I have to go look up what a zettabyte is.
I think that's 10 to the 21 power.
Jeez.
So there's a few zeros there. But put that in perspective. 1 zettabyte equals 152 million years of high-def video. So worldwide, we're going to create 44 zettabytes of that.
Right.
So if you figure even 30% of that is of any value, Right. You start thinking about how many emails are sitting in waste baskets and right.
Sure.
Unproductive data. We'll probably have to store 15 zettabytes of data. And when you pause and look back across the entire manufacturing capability of data storage on a worldwide basis, they think they can accommodate 10. So we've got 5 zettabytes that are going to end up in a bit bucket someplace in someone's operations floor.
Wow.
So I think part of this complexity message is we don't necessarily need more data. We need to figure out a better way of dealing with what we have and make sure that we've got quality data.
Right. Yeah. I think that's a great point. And I think another point we at least I'd like to circle back to is from a smart manufacturing perspective, or from a manufacturer who's trying to get through their day, use the assets that they have, bring in new assets, continue to drive value as you talked about in the different functional areas and operational areas. They don't have to be data experts, right? They don't have to be systems experts. There are folks that are working specifically right here in CESMII, right? Our charter is to work on this complexity, right? And
Yep.
to work and provide an environment where the technologies are either created or are commonized or are driven for commonality or interoperability and orchestration like you're talking about, so that the manufacturers themselves don't have to be experts and focused on the complexity all the time. They can focus on driving performance, driving value, driving improvements for their business. And so that's really central and core to who we are and what we're working on.
Yeah, you're on point. And I completely agree. You start thinking about how do I get the right piece of data in the right hands, have that data in the right language or the right context or the right time frame to make the timely and right decision, so we can continue to drive the optimization of that manufacturing process. That's the name of the game, I think, and it really speaks to the efforts that some of us are trying to make in the industry and the space around this idea of harmonization and orchestration, and certainly on point for CESMII.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. Well, time flies here as we get into these conversations, and so we are just about out of time here from this perspective. And I always like to throw it back to our guests and give you one shot to take us out here. So just throw the question that we started with back at you and say, what does smart manufacturing look like to Mark Besser?
I think, Mike, it's all about this harmonization and orchestration. We have a lot of assets, whether those are people, machines, systems, technologies, sensors, resources, compute power, right? How do we get all of those orchestrated and harmonized in a way that we're making great music together? And when we're making great music, we're making great product. Right. So that orchestration and harmonization is really the key to me, and that's smart manufacturing in my book.
Fantastic. Well, appreciate it, Mark. And I will let you go, and really, really appreciate the time.
Thanks much. Thanks, everybody.
Well, hopefully you were able to have a good takeaway there from Mark, a good series of takeaways, and appreciate him being flexible with us, and hopefully the recording came through well. Just like to encourage everybody, as I cycle through some slides here, to stay engaged with us. As I mentioned before, you can email me with any questions that you have. If any questions came into the Q&A, we will respond to those. You can also send in ideas for topics, things that you want to hear about. Sign up to be a guest. You have a point of view that you'd like to share on here, shoot me a note and let me know. We would certainly love to do that. Also encourage you, our rhythm for these events is the second and fourth Wednesday of every month at the same time, 11:30 a.m. Eastern, 8:30 a.m. Pacific time, for 20 minutes to get you in front of other industry folks and share their point of view. And in 2 weeks from now, on September 25th, I will have Tom Comstock, one of the principal analysts from LNS Research, and he will be answering the question, what does smart manufacturing look like as part of industrial transformation? So I hope to see everybody on the 25th. Until then, take care.